Today we'll compare the Nvidia Shield Android TV to the Asus Nexus player, run benchmarks, and find out how they stack up against one another.
Welcome to the channel. This is TechnoScope.
Comparing the Nexus player to a powerhouse like the Nvidia Shield Android TV almost seems unfair. The two are very similar, but the Shield is actually more of a competitor to the Xbox One and PS4 than it is to the Nexus player. The Nexus player is the device you'd go out and buy if you wanted a Roku or Apple TV, but you prefer Android and probably already use Google services. Meanwhile, the Shield is something you'd buy if you want the Xbox One or PS4, but you want to save $150 to $200. Both systems are built on the Android TV operating system. Android TV is an OS Google created specifically for use with your TV. In the case of these media players, think of them as the Roku with games, but with much more potential. Both systems are relatively straightforward to set up. Both have an available remote and game controller, and both stream content to your TV from the internet. They include the typical rundown of streaming apps such as Netflix, Hulu, and YouTube, as well as Google-specific apps like the Google Music app in case you have an all-access subscription. However, unlike other media players, these run Android, so installing the same apps used on your phones and tablets is possible in most cases. This gives the Shield and Nexus player the capability to be media powerhouses when paired with apps such as VLC, Kodi TV, and ES File Explorer. It also allows the installation of emulators such as SNES 9X, which allows you to play your favorite retro Super Nintendo games. The Nexus player includes a simple 5-button remote with a circular directional pad. Pressing the microphone button will bring up Google Search, and the remote acts as a microphone, allowing you to search for content by voice. The system itself is capable of displaying 1080p video at 60 Hz. It has a 1.8 GHz quad-core Intel Atom processor paired with Imagination-powered VR Series 6 graphics, 2D and 3D engine. For memory, it has 1 GB of RAM and a mere 8 GB of storage. There is one micro USB 2.0 port, which allows for attaching storage using an OTG adapter, but only apps will recognize the drive. The OS completely ignores it. The Nexus player does not have an Ethernet port, but it has internal 802.11 AC Wi-Fi with MIMO support. It also has Bluetooth 4.1 for connecting the remote, the optional controller, and other Bluetooth devices. When I bought the Nexus player, the price was $99, plus another $39 for the optional controller, bringing my price to $138 plus shipping. There was definitely an early adopter tax in there because the Nexus player is now only $79 and is often on sale for less than that. Click the link in the description below for purchasing options and more details. I used two benchmark apps to compare the performance between these two devices. Running AnTuTu at 1080p, the Nexus player chugged along and eventually scored 39,265. In comparison, I ran the same benchmark on my Samsung Galaxy Note 4 with a resolution of 1440p and scored 50,724. I expected more from an Intel Atom processor without the limitation of running on battery power. So next I fired up 3D Mark. Unfortunately, I cannot give you the score on this benchmark because each time I attempted to run the test, the Nexus player would suddenly reboot halfway through it and it never completed the benchmark. This benchmark isn't the first time I've seen that happen. More on this later. The Nvidia Shield Android TV is more gaming oriented than the Nexus player. So when you buy the Shield, the remote is the optional accessory, not the controller. Now the Shield controller, in my opinion, is ugly. and it's probably the ugliest controller designed for a specific system sold today. However, the controller makes up for its aesthetics in functionality and performance. The controller reminds me of the Duke from the original Xbox. It's big and comfortable, but without the awkward black and white buttons. The game buttons are laid out identically to the buttons on the Nexus player. Or is it the other way around? However, in addition to those game buttons, Nvidia gives you 4 capacitive buttons in the middle. The Shield logo, a back button, a play pause button, and a home screen button. Compare that to the power button on the Nexus player controller, which turns the controller on and off with 2 adjacent buttons for back and home screen. The play pause button was a welcome addition, and it's great to have in games. The Shield button on the Shield controller has 2 functions. It can bring the system out of sleep mode, consequently turning on your TV and changing any HDMI connected devices to the correct input if all devices are CEC compatible. And it also doubles as a search button. The controller has a built-in microphone which allows you to perform voice searches. On the bottom of the controller are plus and minus buttons. If your HDMI CEC devices support volume controls, these buttons can be used to turn the volume up and down on those devices. This was very convenient with the 40-inch Toshiba in my bedroom, as I no longer needed the TV remote to control the volume. Not all TVs support this feature, so the Shield has the option of increasing and decreasing internal volume, as well as setting the volume to fixed if you will be using an external non-HDMI CEC compatible device. The top of the controller has a micro USB 2.0 port for charging, a LED indicator that is rather easy to overlook, and a headphone jack that will allow you to watch TV content without disturbing others in the room. And finally, this controller communicates over Wi-Fi instead of slow Bluetooth, giving this console a perceivably instant reaction time, far more than I can say for the Nexus player on occasion. The system itself is capable of displaying 2160p ultra high definition, often mislabeled as 4K, at 60 Hz. This makes the Shield the only media player at the moment capable of streaming 4K content from Hulu and Netflix. While your new 4K TV is undoubtedly a smart TV, as of today, your only other option for 4K content is to attach a brand spanking new computer with HDCP 2.2 support. I haven't tested the 4K capabilities of this device, however, because I do not have a 4K TV yet. The system runs a 2 GHz quad-core Tegra X1 processor with a 256-core Maxwell GPU. For memory, it has 3 GB of RAM. On the base model, you get 16 GB of solid-state storage, twice that of the Nexus player, while on the Pro model, you get a 500 GB hard drive. The Shield also has a micro SD slot and 2 USB 3.0 ports for additional storage. However, I do not recommend using them to hold your apps or any important files. More on this later. The system also has a micro USB 2.0 port. Unlike the Nexus player, you're given the option of using a gigabit Ethernet port, something I highly recommend if you intend to take advantage of Nvidia's grid service, or you can use the internal 802.11ac dual band Wi-Fi. I was never able to get surround sound from the Nexus player without using Kodi TV. However, the Shield has Dolby 7.1 surround pass-through capability. Software-wise, one big difference with the Shield is the built-in ability to stream your game sessions to Twitch. However, a native Twitch app is missing from the Android TV platform altogether. The Nvidia Shield Android TV was $199 at the time of purchase, making the console only $61 more than what I paid for the Nexus player with this optional controller. For an additional $100, you can get the Pro model. However, at that price point, you may want to weigh your other options. For only $50 more, you can buy an Xbox One. However, while you get far more quality games to choose from, those games cost much more for each title, and the Xbox One is not as flexible of a system as the Shield, which is an Android device. The Shield also has an optional stand if you prefer vertical orientation versus horizontal. And the optional remote, while expensive, also has a headphone jack and capacitive volume controls. Running AnTuTu at 1080p, the Shield was quite a champion and eventually scored an amazing 70,718, nearly doubling the 39,265 of the Nexus player. Then I fired up 3D Mark on the Shield. The Nexus player would not finish the 3D Mark benchmark, but the Shield scored 47,263. I did not run 3D Mark on my Note 4. These tests were pretty much what I was expecting from these devices. However, I thought the Atom processor would do better. Still, when you look at what these devices were meant for, they served their purposes rather well. One was meant for watching movies and listening to music with occasional gaming, while the other is all that but with much more focus on the gaming aspect. These consoles do share one trait, however. They both have minor problems that are annoying. The Nexus player, as I've said earlier, has an issue with restarting when the system is under load. It never does it when you're watching a movie or listening to music. The system restarts when you're playing games or doing something that's graphic intensive. Keep in mind, these games are not even close to as demanding as the games the Shield is capable of running. These are games that can be played on a cell phone. Other issues include the Bluetooth suddenly not responding while in the middle of playing a game, and the remote shipped with my unit died a couple of weeks ago. It has been RMA'd by Asus, and I'm preparing to ship it to them for a replacement. Also, I believe Google should have never released this device without Ethernet. An enthusiast that wants a seriously low latency, uninterrupted connection will prefer Ethernet over Wi-Fi. The Shield hasn't been problem-free either. However, I believe the problems can be fixed via a firmware update. This system was the first I've ever encountered where an accessory was wirelessly updated with the system. However, there are still minor glitches. At times, the Shield controller will simply refuse to turn on. I haven't been able to figure out why, but when it happens, the only way to power on the controller is to connect it to the system using the included USB cable. By far the most common issue I have is accidentally hitting the Shield button, bringing up the voice search in the middle of doing something. The button is so sensitive, 50% of the time when it happens, I didn't even realize my finger touched the Shield button. The other 50% of the time, I was just attempting to pick it up, move the controller, or I was doing something else when my finger accidentally brushed across it. It is by far the most annoying thing you will notice using this device. The last problem I had, I didn't troubleshoot or bother returning to see if the problem happened again. The console is plugged in all night, but after so many hours, it goes into a sleep state. I decided I wanted to put my games on something other than the 16 gigabytes of internal storage, which is also shared with the system itself. So I put a spare 16 gigabyte micro SD card into the slot, along with a 16 gigabyte USB flash drive I have that isn't being used for anything else. I went into the system and hit erase, there isn't a format option, set the system to automatically install future apps onto the SD card, and I moved all of my apps over to the SD card with the exception of ES File Explorer. I played some games, watched some movies, and then went to bed. The next morning, I hit the Shield button, my TV turns on, and I'm taken to the home screen that is missing every third-party app I installed except ES File Explorer. I quickly determined that for some reason, Shield corrupted all of the data and even the file system on both the card and the flash drive. I had to remove both and use my PC to get them working again. It's a minor problem, but with a major side effect. So when it comes down to it, the Shield absolutely wins my vote. Hopefully one day soon, they will fix these issues I'm having. Even if they don't, they aren't deal breakers. The Shield costs more than double the currently less than $70 Nexus player, but if you want more than just Netflix and Hulu, you can't beat the performance of the Nvidia Shield at the starting price of $199. Either way, I have links to both in the description below if you want to see your purchasing options. So what do you think of these devices? Do you own one? Are you planning to buy one? What are your favorite features? Leave your comments below. While you're down there, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video. I'm Elemento, and this is TechnoScope.
TechnoScope is a TwistedCurve production.